Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nella, Communication Officer at the ASEAN Center for Energy, and I will be the MC for the webinar today. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you here this afternoon. I would like to thank you for your enthusiasm and joining us today on the ASEAN Energy Transition webinar Renewable Energy. Before we get started, I would like to kindly remind everyone that the materials and video will be available on our website shortly after the event, and the video as well on our YouTube channel, so please kindly subscribe. And also, if you have questions, kindly type them on the chat box. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Nookie Utama, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Energy. He has an academic and research background as postdoctorate in graduate school Energy Science Kyoto University for energy scenario planning in Southeast Asia. Before assuming his position in ACE, he worked in various international organizations as well as private sector in energy and environmental issues. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nookie as he will deliver the opening remarks, and also he will be a moderator for today's webinar. Dr. Nookie, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Nella. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening for everybody who's joining this webinar. On behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the second ASEAN Plan of Action and Energy Cooperation or APEC dissemination event, which is as part of the program that ACE is having with the various topics. And currently, today, we will focus on the RE. Before we started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who generously help us to make this event come together to become a success. Especially for our distinguished speakers for taking their time and will share their perspective to incite us. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the 38th ASEAN Energy Ministers meeting in energy November last year has endorsed two flagship documents that play a crucial role in the region's energy cooperation. The documents is the of Action for Energy Cooperation Phase 2, 2021-2025, 6 ASEAN Energy Outlook in 6. The ASEAN Energy Outlook 6 will provide us with an overview of the current energy landscape with some possible scenarios for policymakers and other stakeholders. It is also contains energy perspective in 2040 and its pathways for the region to be more resilient, affordable, and sustainable. Moreover, under the ASEAN has the key strategy to increase the share of RE to 23% in total primary energy supply, and also increases 35% in installed power capacity at the same year 2025. It is therefore greater cooperation are needed for ASEAN to achieve its target. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that by attending this webinar series, you will be able to get hands-on experience into the ASEAN RE landscape, targets, and strategic initiative to pursue the next 5 years in the region. Thank you very much once again for your attending, and very warm welcome to all of you. Stay safe and stay healthy. Back to you, Nella.
Thank you very much, Pak Nookie. I think you may continue to the next agenda item, which is the kind of discussion with the speakers. I would give the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nella. Today's webinar is quite interesting. We're going to invite three speakers, which is coming from a various background. First is Dr. Andi Tirta. He is currently a manager of modeling and policy planning in the ASEAN Center for Energy, having a background in material science and several experiences for some renewable energy projects, planning and implementation in some remote area in Indonesia. Within the organization of ACE, Dr. Andi is appointed as a project manager of promotion of higher and efficient air conditioners in ASEAN through harmonization of standard, and leads the preparation of the 7th ASEAN Energy Outlook. There is much interest for the food, energy, and water nexus for the sustainability. So for the coming presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Andi to present the finding and the updates and the issues on the achieving APEC phase 2 RE target based on the finding of 6 ASEAN energy outlook. We will have 15 minutes altogether of the presentation, including question and answer. Please, Dr. Andi, the floor is yours.
Executive Director of ASEAN Center of Energy, Dr. Nookie Agiautama, all colleagues in ASEAN Center for Energy, and also all the participants. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please allow me to share our finding on the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook related how we achieve the APEC phase 2 target, especially in the RE target. Next slide, please. Okay, on my presentations, I would like to give you a bit information about the ASEAN at glance. Perhaps on the participant here is not come from the ASEAN country, but perhaps from the other countries. The second one, I would like to also introduce about the APEC as a collaborative actions of AIMS in the energy sector. The third one about the energy data history, and the 6th ASEAN energy outlook, and the last one is about the recommendations. Next slide, please. Okay, ASEAN at glance, you can imagine ASEAN with the graph on the right side corner above. If you compare about the populations, ASEAN is much bigger than France and Germany, almost 4 times. It's around half of the China, and also it's like around twice of the USA. You also can see the graph in the red one. It's about the GDP, where we have a lot of like around around 8 trillion US dollars, and also the per capita. However, we are still lower than France, Germany, and also the USA. This graph want to show that this is the potential of also the things that ASEAN can do more in the regions, and also contribute in the energy sectors. Countries in the ASEAN, Southeast Asian, make the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We call it the ASEANs. And in the 1999, ASEAN make the organizations called the ASEAN Center Energy, or we call it as the ACE, as the intergovernmental body to discuss and to focus on the energy sector in the ASEANs. Next slide, please. Okay, to do some collaborative actions, ASEAN, AMS, or ASEAN member state, we have a guideline that we call as APEC, or ASEAN Plan of Actions for Energy Cooperations, that already launched for several times, from first in the 1999 until the last phase, of the APEC. We call it as the APEC phase 2 in 2021 until 2025, that already endorsed in the ASEAN ministerial energy meeting in Vietnam last year. Next slide, please. And when we have the collaborative actions, we of course we can do a lot of things, such as there are 7 areas that already become the target of the APEC. First is about the ASEAN Power Grid, where we have the multilateral power trade pilot projects. Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline, we have like 6 M's through the 13 pipelines. The third one is about coal and clean coal technology, where we succeed to make the 10,000 megawatt coal-fired power generations, where it's consisting of the supercritical and also the ultra supercritical coal-fired power plant. The fourth one also about the energy efficiency and conservations, when last time we already surpassed our target from 20% that we already achieved from 21% of energy intensity in level 2018. And also, moreover, we also just increased our target in 2025 to be the 32% from 23%. The fifth about the RE, renewable energy, that from the last phase of the APEC, we can achieve that almost 14% of share of RE in the total primary energy supply in 2018. And about the regional energy policy and planning, where we already published 2 flagship publications that we call as the ASEAN Energy Outlook. And the last one about the civilian energy, civilian nuclear energy, where we published several studies about it. One. Next slide, please. Okay. In the next phase 2, APAEC, we have the sub-theme as our main theme, that accelerating energy transitions and strengthening resilience through greater innovations and cooperations. So this is our sub-theme that become our focus for the next 5 years until 2025. Okay, next slide, please. And for the regional target in 2025, we are having the target that in 2025, at least 23% renewable energy in the total primary energy supply. So don't be confused about this number, that our target is in the total primary energy supply, not only in the power sectors. Okay, next slide, please. When we talk about the ASEAN in energy, let's see the ASEAN energy history. From the ASEAN energy history, like previously we already discussed, that almost like 14% from the TPES until 2017, the RE share still exists on the TPES. However, mostly more than 20%, more than 80% of the total primary energy supply is still come from the fossil-based source. However, if we see the data that already published from the BP Statistical Review in 2019, we have to be aware that the oil are over P ratio in ASEAN, which means that how much the oil or gas reserve and productions that needed in the ASEAN, it all expected only for the next 14 years. So we have to be aware that if we in ASEAN still rely on the fossil, there is like a more challenge for us if we only rely on the fossil from the ASEAN. Next slide, please. Okay, here it's also the historical energy data, especially for the power capacity. If you see the graph on the left side, the RE cell until 2018, it's in the power sector is around 67.6%, or it's around 26% of the total power capacity installed in ASEAN. And on the left corner bottom, you can see that if we calculate ASEAN pace for the RE share, it's quite, we can say that not too much the accelerations. From the 2005 we have 19%, and in the 2018 we have right now 26%. Next slide, please. Okay, after we see the history of the data, now if the question is what the outlook of the future of energy in ASEAN, when we talk about the outlook or what's the future of the ASEAN energy in ASEAN, we use the tools that we call as the ASEAN Energy Outlook as a flagship of publications of the ASEAN Center for Energy. Yeah, next slide, please. In our outlook, we are making the scenario. Scenario is kind of like how we not predict, but we design for the future of the energy of ASEAN. We have four approach as we call as the scenario. One is a baseline, or maybe some people use as the business as usual scenario, where here no RE and EI and EE policy interventions, but includes the power development plan or PDP. The second one is we call as the ATS, or ASEAN Country Target Scenario, where it revert to the existing AMS target or top-down approach and the existing policies from EE, RE, and national determined contributions, etc. And the third one, and this is the most the thing that we want to discuss in this discussion, is APAEC target scenario, where as a regional, here we more ambitious of RE and EE to meet the regional target under the APAEC as we discussed before. And the last one is the SDG 7 as the additional of the scenario that we consider also from the aspect of the sustainable development goals. Next slide, please. Okay. From our modeling in the AO, in the ASEAN Energy Outlook, it can be seen that in 2025 in the baseline, it is projected that the RE share still in the around 14% of RE, still not much. Perhaps you can see that. Perhaps you will ask that what is the grant is become increased, but why the percentage is not much different? Because another sector is also, I mean, another source of the energy is also increased. If we use the ITS, it's around 18%, and of course, in our regional target, as in the APS, it's around 23%. Next slide, please. And how about the total final energy consumptions from our modeling data that TFC in ASEAN mostly mainly are from the sector of the industry and also transportation. So when we know that the sector of energy industry and also transport become the main the consumer of the energy, so some policy or some emphasizing we can emphasize for these two sectors. And from the right graph, we can see that the contribution of the fossil is still quite large. That fossil fuel contribute to 63% for TFC in 2017, and in the projections until 2040, the share is still quite high, around 47%. Next slide, please. This is the energy landscape from the total final energy consumptions in the all scenario. Here in the 2025 for the baseline, ATS and also the APS. From the disaggregated by sector, industry is projected to hold the most share in all scenario, followed in order by the transportations, residential, commercial, and agriculture. Okay, next slide, please. This is another data that we got from our modeling. When we talk about the export-import of energy, especially for the fossil-based energy from coal, oil, natural gas, and others, it can be seen that in the baseline, the ASEAN will be the next exporter up to 2040 or before become the net importer. And the ASEAN projected to be the natural gas importer before 2025. Next slide, please. From this graph, so how to achieve from the ATS to APS gap? From the ATS, as we already mentioned, that at most we got in 2025 is around 18%, or here 17.7%. And how to achieve for the 23%? It become the challenge and also the things that we have that have to be done on some policy and also the strategy in regional. And yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so how to we to comply all this the possibility to move from the ATS target to the APS target? One of the most important things is about the biofuel and also the biomass. It's already mandated that biofuel can be or bioethanol and also biodiesel here. It can be targeted to replace our dependency on the oil and also gas. Like for example, in Indonesia, it's already mandated for the target in 2025. E20 and also E30 it become target in the 2050. And also for biodiesel, it's B30. It's by 2020 until 2025. It's already implemented in the energy. In the industry and also already even in the power sector and also in the transportation sectors. Next slide, please. The second strategy that we can take is about the decarbonization in ASEAN power sectors. In long term, the more stringent energy efficiency measures from the ATS to APS will reduce the needs for the power plant capacity. Notable increase in solar and further reductions in fossil fuel-based plant are shown. The added capacity on solar and wind are elevated from the resource assessment tools and the maximum VRE aligned with the aims 3. My colleagues here, Dr. Akbar Swandaru, will talk about this after our presentations. We also can see in here, we already in 2025 in the baseline ATS, APS. So if we want to achieve in the APS or the regional target, at least 48% of RE should be injected on our power sectors. Next slide, please. And this is the strategy that possible that to the decarbonizations in ASEAN power sectors. To achieve 33%, our modeling team have the strategy how we reduce the coal, gas, and oil, and how we improve the geothermal, hydro, solar, wind, and also other green energy to support the power sectors. Okay, next slide, please. This is
Dr. Andi.
Yes, my last recommendations. First is about the electricity generations. In a regional context, some gaps about the regional target emissions and the efficiency target. And also we can see the grid improvement and technologies, emission standards about the transportations, about the biofuels, efficiency target, emissions, and public transit become our regional context. And also about the industry for energy efficiency, emission standards become the things that we have to be aware. And the last one is about the residential and commercial. I think that's all. The next slide, I think, is quite similar. Okay, next slide. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, next slide. I think it's my it's close of I think the end of my presentation. Back to you, Executive Director of Dr. Nookie Agiarutama.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andi Tirta. Right on time, you explaining the scenarios that develop in the IAO 6 ASEAN Energy Outlook, such as the baseline, including the ASEAN targeted scenarios, which is incorporating the power development plan of each member states, and also the progressive scenario where you try to push more renewable energy into the energy landscape. I think it's quite interesting, and it is related with the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation that being launched last year, targeting 23% RE in 2025 and also 35% installed power capacity in the same year 2025 for the whole region. I think it's very interesting figures that you showed us. If anyone want to have a question in the later stage after we have another two presenters, you can deliver your question either directly speak or putting your message, and we will collecting all of the question. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Andi. And for the next speakers, I would like to invite Miss Monica Merdekawati. She is a research analyst in ACE as a technical officer for Renewable Energy Efficiency Department, and she also research analyst for the ASEP projects, responsible for the engagement with the national focal points, doing various studies covering the RE and energy efficiency investment, database of ASEAN energy policy, and she is holding a master's degree from University of Southampton, United Kingdom, and her activities cover energy policy, energy economics, green finance, and of course to support the climate change mitigation in the energy sector in Southeast Asia. So the time is yours, Ms. Monica. You have 15 minutes to present. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nookie, for the opportunity. Hello. Herewith, I'm pleased to share the renewable energy status, potential, and opportunities in ASEAN, especially how ASEAN progresses towards green recovery in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic and the renewable energy initiatives under Applied Phase 2. Next slide, please. While the previous discussion was taken from the lens of the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, in this session I will share what is the status of renewable energy development in ASEAN from the recap of Energy Insights in the year of 2020. The Insight series are the analysis of ACE archive news that are collected in weekly basis. If you are the subscriber, you may have received the weekly update from us. These insights are specifically designed to highlight each energy sector. There are electricity, oil and gas, and renewables, and also energy climate nexus. The publications are routinely updated in quarterly basis and available in ACE website as provided in the link. Next slide, please. So the outline of today's presentation will be started from the overview of the impact in power sector, then followed with the clean energy development in 2020. And then the discussion is focused on how ASEAN could maximize the untapped renewable potential. Then with many new movements related to climate change mitigation by a number of superpower companies in Asia Pacific towards net zero pledge, the discussion is focused to identify the opportunities ahead. And last, we will discuss the renewable energy initiatives under the API Phase 2. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So the multiplier effect of COVID-19 pandemic immediately impacted the electricity sector. The social distancing has driven down the electricity use in general. We noted the drop around 6% in Indonesia, 20 until 30% in Philippines, and even can reach 50% decrease in Malaysia. This has caused a profit loss for the most of the utilities of ASEAN. For example, Morocco lost around $180 million in the first half of 2020. TNB lost around 110 million USD, and also PLN lost around 870 million USD in the third quarter of 2020. Although the electricity demand has fell in general, the restriction policy caused a surge in household electricity consumption, as we observed in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. This rise is simply because more people at home, either due to work from home or who are unfortunate to be laid off from work. And to protect the basic foundation of the economy, utilities are required by the government to reduce the electricity tariff. Many measures are taken across ASEAN, such as tariff exemption in Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, free electricity for 3 months in Myanmar, and also tariff reduction in Brunei, Malaysia, and Philippines, and also electricity relief for industrial, commercial, and agricultural sectors in Cambodia. Basically, these measures are aimed to ease the financial burden of the vulnerable groups, which in the other hand also worsening the unprecedented net profit loss that utility already had. Next slide, please. So consequently, utility of ASEAN needs to rapidly change its investment portfolio, or the expansion planning of power capacity and grid infrastructure must be revisited to cope with the shrinking electricity market and economic slowdown. The obvious choice is to delay the development and construction of ongoing power plant project. We observed the number of delay, which is mostly on coal and gas power plant. To name a few, there is a gas power plant worth 800 million USD in Cambodia, and also 6.5 gigawatt power projects, coal power projects in Indonesia are delayed. So how the implications affect the clean power development in ASEAN? Although the economic activities are yet to return to its pre-COVID state, ASEAN are optimistic that the power demand will gradually increase. The indicators are there with increasing electricity sale price in Q3 of 2020 in Singapore, and also GDP growth in Malaysia, and also higher demand in Philippines if compared to the end of 2019. Reflecting the vulnerability of fossil fuel-based power plant to such a crisis with abrupt demand change, a number of major economies in ASEAN, such as Indonesia and Malaysia, are determined to build back better with renewable. Indonesia allocated around 670 million US$ to build power infrastructure and also increase renewable supply. In Malaysia, the Sarawak Energy focus on the investment of renewable and future hydrogen solution research. And also Cambodia received financial support from ADB to fund the expansion of power grid and development of the first utility scale battery energy storage. Next, please. So as observed in power sector, the economic downturn also put many renewable initiatives at risk. With the electricity market of most of ASEAN member states are vertically integrated, The clean energy development relies heavily on the financial health of the relevant state-owned company. It is natural to see a negative impact in renewable development, although in the year of 2020, actually the condition is better, but it's not fully away. The movement restriction has caused a major logistic and supply chain disruptions, with most of the renewable power projects in ASEAN still depend on imported machines and also foreign experts. We observed a number of delayed hydropower projects in Mekong region and in Indonesia, and also delayed solar projects in Philippines, and also delayed wind power development in Vietnam, and also biomass output supply in Malaysia is at risk. So the economic difficulty also led to decreasing demand of commercial solar panels by up to 70% in Indonesia, and also causing delay of country's biodiesel program. Despite of the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic, renewable has shown better resiliency with if compared to the oil and gas. And despite of the low oil prices, meaning a risk to the cost competitiveness of renewable, we observe a continuous renewable initiative. For example, in Vietnam, still released the second FIT scheme for solar projects in April 2020 with lower rates compared to original FIT scheme. In contrast with Indonesia, Philippines continues their bioethanol blending program to mandate E10. And Malaysia kicked the fourth large solar scale auction with a cumulative capacity of 1 gigawatt. Myanmar also successfully initiated its first solar auction with cumulative capacity of 1 gigawatt as of September 2020. In Indonesia, PLN also continue with the development of Kayan hydropower plant and Cirata solar floating power plant, which expected to be commissioned in the early 2020. Philippines also received 13 gigawatt solar project applications under its renewable portfolio standard. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic somehow has given us a reset to a long-standing paradigm on the way we look at energy. Cheap energy is not enough. We need a sustainable one, and the pandemic has given us time to reflect how if we can't mitigate the climate change where it is predicted to cause more catastrophic effect. So in ASEAN, the discussion of maximizing renewable energy potential as the cornerstone of the recovery has been floating throughout 2020. There is idea to offer more flexible credit terms for the RE financing and incentives to boost the cost competitiveness of RE in comparison to fossil fuel, and to leverage the job opportunities and to improve regional supply chain and also manufacturing capabilities of renewable technologies through regional cooperation. To name a few, the initiatives are Malaysia allocated $2.5 billion towards RE projects such as rooftop solar panels, LED street lighting. Thailand allocated $960 million to support energy for all schemes. And also Indonesia is designing the Solar Archipelago program to boost solar rooftop installation, which could create 22,000 jobs. And also Vietnam prioritized the renewable in its power spending over the next 10 years. Philippines also modified the 60 to 40 equity share requirement between local and foreign investors in RE projects, in addition to extending the power purchase contract. Next slide, please. So according to the survey that ACE had in March 2020, 65% of the total of 400 respondents from 25 countries noted that oil and gas sector are impacted the most. Indeed, the COVID-19 has been a gloomy period for oil and gas sector, especially in ASEAN, with the plummeting price. These circumstances brought significant challenges and threats to the activities of the oil companies, which brought the companies to rethinking their investment strategy, including the diversification to renewable energy and other clean technologies. Major international oil companies have announced their emission target, in some cases aiming for net zero target by 2050, such as BP, Equinor, Shell, and Total. BP and Equinor are diversifying their investment portfolio to renewables, while Shell and Total have developed some kind of renewable energy strategy by changing their operational organization and focusing heavily in the electricity. So in ASEAN, similar trend is also observed. For example, Pertamina is developing 1.3 gigawatt geothermal power plant and to install rooftop solar in the company's complex and subholdings property, and to develop utility scale solar PV in the future, and to support B30 mandatory program. For in Malaysia, Petronas also exploring the development of solar and wind energy with 3 gigawatt target by 2024. And AC Energy of Philippines also is expanding its renewable energy portfolio. So, given that major international oil companies are the long-standing participants in ASEAN energy market, and the financing is always noted as the main bottleneck of the development of renewable energy. So in my humble opinion, this shifting trend is the indication to start to diversify investment strategy is a golden opportunity for ASEAN to maximize the potential to tapping into private financing for the untapped renewable resources in the region. So we could start through the collaboration with the dialogue partners and also international organizations to develop many renewable projects in addition to solar and wind. Next slide, please. In addition to that, the recent pledge by Asia's economy superpowers such as China, Japan, and South Korea, and also Singapore, that have announced a net zero pledge. And also with the upcoming COP26 and also the recent European Green New Deal, and the $2 trillion clean energy plan that was proposed by President Biden administration are solidifying the global commitment towards mitigating climate change. 2020 also coincides with the round of NDC updates, with the country had ratified Paris Agreement has to update its NDC to indicate more ambitious progress towards the Paris commitment. Responding this, we see that ASEAN member states are also stepping up their commitment, as we see with the recent updates by Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Brunei Darussalam. Noting this, ASEAN could grab the opportunity to strengthen the regional cooperation to focus on the sustainable recovery plan, and to strengthen regional capabilities in RE technologies, including the manufacturing, supply chain, and human resource. Why? Because soon enough, with the government and financial institutions are moving away from fossil fuel, and with the advancement of the RE and also storage technology, the renewable energy would be the energy commodity just like oil and gas now, like in near future. So ASEAN should be ready by then. Next slide, please. So noting this growing interest on sustainability to improve energy access and security in the region, improving the RE sector is a vital part in APEC Phase 2. One of the priorities is to establish the long-term ASEAN renewable energy roadmap that will take into account the recommendations from the study AIM3 and also ASEAN Energy Outlook. The main aim is to advance the RE policy and also decarbonization pathway. With this, the second OBS of APEC also aim to drive high-level policy dialogues. So,
Monica,
policy, yeah, Pak.
1 more minute.
Yeah. So this policy could be materialized into concrete set of actionable initiatives. APEC also promoting the energy resiliency through the emerging technologies such as digital transformation and energy system, energy storage, such as hydrogen, fuel cells, and battery. So to increase the regional capability through OBS 3, APEC plan to establish a nodal network with research institutions and universities to promote cooperation in the R&D activities. And the fourth OBS, APEC will explore the innovation of RE financing to facilitate more enabling investment environment. The fifth OBS APEC also will put focus on the increase of biofuel and bioenergy in the region. And in the sixth OBS, APEC also put special focus on the enhancement of human resource capability in RE sector with the aim to increase the success rate of RE projects with highly qualified professionals. So we have through this OBS, we also have ongoing projects such as ASEAN German Energy Program and also ASEAN Climate Change Energy Project that often engage dialogue partners and also international organizations to discuss many strategies to increase renewable energy development. Here, I would like to emphasize that ACE are open to collaborate in activities under these two ongoing projects to realize this OBS. Next slide, please. So this slide concludes my presentation for today. Thank you for your kind attention, and back to you, Pak Nookie.
Thank you very much, Ms. Monica Merdekawati. Indeed, very interesting finding that you just show us. You mentioned on the multiplier effect of COVID-19 pandemics, which is immediately impact the electricity sectors. You show us the condition in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and other countries in member state. You also explain the consequence of the utility of ASEAN, which is needs to rapidly change its investment portfolio, including to divesting to RE. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. Although the economic downturn impacted the RE sectors, but in general, the RE has shown better resiliency compared to other fossil fuel primary energy. I think this one is because of this logistics perspective, especially on the RE coming from geothermal or hydropower, which is no logistic issues in that sense. And then COVID-19 pandemics also bring the increases of the RE penetration. I think it's quite interesting as well. And noting the growing interest on sustainability to improve energy access and security in the region, including improving the RE sector as a vital part in the APEC phase 2. So thank you very much, and I hope that if there is some question for Ms. Monica, you may type it down in the message on this webinar platform. So for the next presenters, I would like to invite Dr. Akbar Swandaru. Yeah, I hope he's here already. Dr. Akbar Swandaru is currently as senior officer for power, fossil fuel, and alternative energy and storage, or PFS, in the ASEAN Center for Energy. He's working on the development of the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Studies, or AIMS, for the ASEAN Power Grid, a regional blueprint for electricity interconnection in the region through higher penetration of RE. He also involved with several other energy-related projects for promoting energy transition in the region. He holds a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. So I would like to invite Dr. Akbar Swandaru to present his interesting finding. Please, the time is yours.
Yeah. Good afternoon from Jakarta. Thank you very much, Dr. Nookie. So first of all, on behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, allow me to thank to the audience, the ceremony organizer, and especially Dr. Nookie Agya Utama to be here in. My name is Akbar Swandaru, Senior Researcher from ACE. Here I would like to present renewable energy resource assessment and its potential in ASEAN. As you can see in the screen, the topic highlights perspective of wind and solar project development site in support of the vote to identify renewable generation capacity in the ASEAN countries. The goal of this assessment is to support and understand renewable energy potential in each of countries and provide a projection by 2040. As perhaps some of you may be aware, the topic is interrelated with our flagship project, the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Study 3, as reported at 38th ASEAN Minister of Energy meeting. This study was aimed at identifying potential variable renewable energy, wind and solar sites in the ASEAN region and provide energy, solar, wind and solar energy profiling for each of the sites or per country. Finally, points taken away on the issue, possible way ahead will be presented. Next slide, please. So as shown in the slide, we know through here, the minister endorsed two flagship studies by the ASEAN Center for Energy. The first is the well-known the ASEAN 6 ASEAN Energy Outlook, and the second is ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Study. So AIMS-3 particularly provides an update plan of regional transmission network that links the ASEAN power grid power system with the intention to maximize the utilization of regional renewable energy resource as to respond to our ASEAN energy blueprint, the APAEC target. And it is intended to meet the high RE shares in energy mix by 2025 and advancing bilateral and multilateral power trade. The works of AIMS-3 has been online in identifying the foundation of regional integration of renewable energy, which aim to explore the opportunity and benefit of having higher RE. Next slide, please. So a little bit piece of information about AIMS-3 is the genesis of this study lies in the pursuit and realization the need of the ASEAN power grid, and it's intended to promote higher power interconnection and trade and an increased transmission capacity of interconnection between the ASEAN member states. The successful of the AIMS-2 as previously presented drove the introduction of AIMS-3 in the need of increasing the inter-country cooperation, updating it, and in the power sector with the objective of increasing renewable energy integration. Particularly, as you can see in the left side, AIMS-3 has three main tasks. We have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, as you can see in the detail. Particularly for the phase 1, the study are primarily focused on collecting data, and one important task is also to provide RE resource assessment. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, if you take a look at the screen, please move on to the next slide, please. Now, if we dive in detail here, you can see that RE resource assessment. So these tasks are primarily aimed is that to showcase the best wind and solar site in the region, while secondary aims is to provide the hourly profile of wind and solar energy production for each of site. These for each of these sites, these specs sites were made based on best geospatial consideration and have best site on with minimum exposure of wind and solar as affected to the high voltage grid. So next slide, please. Now, after we understand the chronological order of the AIMS-3, we may dive in more detail about the study of the RE resource assessment. So as you can see in the left side, solar technical potential as one example is a way on estimating countries' available wind and solar resource potential to generate electricity by applying limitation, offset constraints such as land use and environmental constraint. In this high-level study, the available resource of country are assumed based on the marketable technology. So according to our study here, you may see that as you can see in the middle of the screen, we found out that there are around 8,000 of gigawatt of gross capacity of solar, whereas for the wind itself, we have around 300 gigawatt of gross capacity. Next slide, please. So this is a piece of example of the work that we have just done in the previous stage. So this is the overall RES assessment, which identified based on the ASEAN solar map. So if you took an example here, if you take a look, for example, Lao PDR, you may see that in the screen, the resource map is to be noted that East border region are having the relatively better solar resource with a rough of 5 kilowatt-hour per meter square day range. Another point, perhaps from the screen, you can see as well for another country like the Myanmar. The resource map to be noted that central and southern regions are having relatively better solar resource with account around 4 until 6 kilowatt-hour per square. So this is a piece of example that we have done so far, and we try to gather and to see how is that the resource potential that we can gather in through our region. Next slide, please. So from the given illustration, we can understand that ASEAN has historically relied on fossil fuel power plant, and according to our study, it is expected to continue this trend in this future. So referring to back 3 years, 2017, the ASEAN power capacity mix was dominated by gas for accounting up to 80 gigawatts, followed by coal, around 70 gigawatts, and oil, 16 gigawatts. And these fossil fuel combined, and it comprised up to 70% of the total. So for the renewable energies other than hydropowers, it accounts less than 20% of power mix other renewable energies. So we can see that the amount of wind and solar is quite insignificant. And it should be noted that coal will increase in its importance in the ASEAN, as he will be likely incorporated in power mix, as it is estimated to grow by 3.8% annually from 2025 until 2040. So we can see that in overall, this is very much the pictures of situation of energy projection in the future found in the AIM study. So as a for illustration, you can see that under the base case, around 31% of total installed capacity are expected by 2025. However, our APIC target, it can go up to more than 10%. So in other words, assuming that we are expected to achieve our APEC target, there must be at least 63 gigawatts solar and around 5.8 gigawatt alone, and these are made in order to achieve the target. Next slide, please. So this is a piece of example of our study that we have found so far. We put it here, the base case and the so-called the ASEAN RE target. And the ASEAN RE target is the APIC target. So from this picture, we would like to show you that the distribution of wind and solar potential, which is in this example, we put the solar as an example. So from the left side screen of the base case, you may see that the distribution of around 63 gigawatt solar are given. And we can see that from here, Vietnam quite dominating in terms of solar potential among the ASEAN countries. However, through our AIM-3 study with intention to provide projection with the APIC target, the distribution of solar potential are shown in the right side. And you can see that it's more fairly distributed, meaning each ASEAN member state do have fairly possible opportunities to contribute the acceleration of energy transition in achieving the ASEAN RE target, and even perhaps beyond. Next slide, please. And it comes to some benefit that driven from the use of renewable energy. So our study also found out that from here, there's a potential of job creation, which we can see in the screen here. We segregate that based on several types of job, like as you can see in the screen, that is a project planning, procurement, manufacturing, installation, and even operation and maintenance. So from here, you may see that among of those distribution of job potential, operation and maintenance for wind and solar account the most. So therefore, we can see that from the utilization of renewable energy will obviously provide high promising job creation for the respective region. Next slide, please. And another aspect is that By applying renewable energy, we can see there is a potential of avoided emission. And in this slide, we took an example of the potential avoided emission by 2040. So you can see that in general, renewable energy has always been the key role in the carbonization of energy sector and the resulting mitigation of climate change effect. So to better illustrate the potential impact of renewable energy, you can see that AIMS 3 finds potential for the emission, and we picked that two examples here: the business as usual, the base case, and the ASEAN RE target or the APEC target. So ACE has analyzed climate pledge under the Paris Agreement in relation to the National Energy Plan and the actual development trend. So according to our findings, in many cases, nationally determined contribution or NDCs have not kept up with the recent rapid growth in renewables. However, our APEC target, the ASEAN RE target, perhaps could help alleviate the process which enable the ASEAN member state reach closer to the greenhouse gas emission avoided each year as a result of renewable energy development in the country. Next slide, please. So you may see that there has always been an opportunities for our renewable energy to grow. Despite the pandemic occur, there's some promising outlook for the market to watch for the renewable energy sector, which we have compiled that into some kind of news and put it in the screen here. So if you pick an example here, by the end of 2020 in Vietnam, they were put into operation a power generation project with total installed capacity of around 70,000 megawatt, whereas among of them, there are around 60,500 megawatt alone from the solar power. So from here, despite the event of pandemic, you may see that the growth of renewable energy are very much promising. And you may see that perhaps this is also happening as well in some other ASEAN countries. Next slide, please. So this is some points taken away from the session here. So in general, ASEAN is rich with wind and solar technical potential, in account up to 8,000 gigawatt of gross capacity of solar itself, and we also have around 350 gigawatt of wind. In 2025, under the base case, we expected to have around 31% of renewable energy. And however, under the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, namely the APEC target, there has potential up to 44%. So in this study, the inclusion of high RE and interconnection provide quantifiable benefit. Moreover, in our study, under the high RE scenario, even there will be potential for cost saving up to $7 billion USD compared to the business as usual case. So in other words, it also gives us an illustration how much that benefit renewable energy can get. Next slide, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Yes, this is the last slide, Dr. Nookie, thank you. So finally, from here, we have captured points taken to be understood with the key trends outlook, including challenges and possible opportunities for renewable energy growth. So ACE has published some of potential resource that might be for useful policymakers in utilities to set up the energy projection as a reference, which you can see that in detail in the screen. We have more than 6 of report, which I believe that you can take a look in the internet, and I hope that you can find it very useful. And I think this will be the last slide that I can give. And perhaps I'm very much thank you for the session given. I'm looking forward for any question. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Nookie.
Yeah, perfect. Right on time. Thank you very much, Dr. Akbar Swandaru. Indeed, very interesting finding you presented today from the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Studies 3, which is the update plan of regional transmission network that links ASEAN power system with the maximized utilization of regional RE resource, and also responded to the APEC targets, meeting 31% RE share in capacity mix by 2025, and including advancing bilateral and multilateral power trades. As we know that ASEAN power grid is being almost 2 decades in the region, and now is coming to the realization. Also, you mentioned the under the base IMS are planning to have 19 gigawatt solar and 6.5 gigawatt wind installed capacity by 2025. Very, very promising figures indeed. And then to achieve the APEC target, at least 63 gigawatt solar and 5.6 gigawatt wind is required, assuming all other type of energy are fixed. So plenty homework that we need to do for achieving those targets. On the PDP case or base case, we could see the Vietnam dominates the solar potential amongst member states. However, through the AIM study, the distribution of solar potential shown more fairly distributed. And under APEC target, we can achieve those fair distribution. Each member states have very possible opportunity to contribute the acceleration of the clean energy transition, achieving the new 2025 ASEAN RE target with the total installed power capacity of 31% or even beyond. I think a very interesting finding you just presented, Dr. Akbar. So again, for the audience, if you like to ask, to the three panelists, please write down your question into the message in the platform. At the moment, we have very interesting question I hope that all panelists, you can show your camera to respond directly question coming from the audience. One question from Kyoko Anagi to Dr. Andi Tirta. AO6 indicating the APS is the most progressive scenario, indicates more than 30% of coal use in power generation, and seems energy transition can be achieved mainly by clean coal technology. What is your comment? So that is first question from Kyoko Anagi to Dr. Andi. And there is a question for to Monica from Teresia Betty Sumarno. Vietnam RE Resilience released its FIT, but also Vietnam applied the RE option for their RE deployment policy. How do you see whether this RE auction for other ASEAN countries to support the RE development? So meaning the auction strategy in other member states, whether it is promising or having challenges. You can explain on that, respond to that question. And then I think we're still waiting for the question to Dr. Akbar Vandayu. Maybe perhaps Dr. Andi Tirta, you can first answering the question from Kyoko Anagi, and then followed by Monica to answer question from Ms. Teresia Betty Sumarno. Thank you.
Thank you, Idi, for the and also Mr. Kyoto Anagi, if I'm not wrong to misspell your name. To spell your name. Please allow me to give a perspective of my own about it. I think for the fossil and also fossil based and also the renewable energy should be not the things that we have to contradict each other, but instead of that, I think it can be support each other. For instance, like as we already mentioned that still around more than 40%, 50% of the support of the coal on our power generations still exists in the our system, energy system. So instead of phasing out the system to be directly go to the clean, I think in the transitions era of this one, we can use the fossil base as the support for the baseline for our electricity system. And for the RE itself, I think yeah, I think the best alternative right now in our power system or generations is become for the reserve margin, or become the supporter of the energy system. Since we also need of course that kind of dilemma of energy about the sustainability, affordability, and also the security itself. So I think we have to be more accommodative, especially about the coal-based power generations that become the cleaner in terms of the technology that can be applied on the systems. That's my perspective, Idi. Back to you.
Yes, thank you very much. The energy transition need quite a stable baseload for the power generation, and in the APAC and IOSEC, you mentioned that the strategy is increasing the share of clean coal technology by utilizing the ultra super critical and super critical technology into the power generation. I think thank you very much for the response. Maybe Monica, Miss Monica, you can respond the question from Miss Betty. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Nookie, and thank you, Dr. Betty, for the question. It is indeed an interesting one. In my humble opinion, RE auction is a promising one to be also adopted by other ASEAN member states, but the things that should be noted before adopting the RE auction, in my opinion, we should ensure that the policy itself is ready, and also the institutional framework, and also the financial system is ready to adopt this auction. For example, like Vietnam, why Vietnam already dare enough to employ this area auction? Because from the last FIT schemes, Vietnam already shown like a remarkable achievement, and through that, it is a necessary step to introduce the area auction, so we could push the renewable energy to be more competitive instead of always be incentivized. So yeah, I hope other ASEAN member states are following Vietnam step, in my opinion. So later could also move forward from FIT to the RE auction scheme. I think that's all from my side, Dr. Nookie.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Monica. Indeed, very interesting question and discussion. We really looking forward on these policies being implemented in the other member states. Another question, I think, for Dr. Akbar. In your presentation in the study for VRE, are there all the hydro is already included? And another question is the RE source versus fossil fuel, the balance between economic and environment. It is not a clear cut, but more or less a dilemma in some member states. What is your thought on this?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nookie. So referring to the first question, yes, we included hydro as part of renewable energy. So referring to the second question, we see that in general, there has always been the issue when it's come to providing energy projection, incorporating renewable energy by looking some aspect like socio-economic and also environmental aspect. So referring to our study, AIMS-3 here, particularly the phase one of the aspect is that we provide a set of study called the capacity expansion planning. So it's basically a study that which to provide the projection of the energy by considering the high amount of renewable energy that can be inputted in the region. So among of those objectives, we also consider the environment aspect and also socio-economic aspect. So therefore, you may see that in terms of socio-economic aspect, there is a potential of cost saving that we have already considered, meaning that we consider how much is that the renewable energy injected and saving costs by replacing the fossil fuel power plant. Another aspect is that you may say that we must consider the environmental impact, such as by looking the potential avoided costs by saving more the operation of fossil fuel-based power plants, such as from the coal, gas, and oil. So obviously, in the AIMS-3 study, we are very much considering the environmental aspect and also socio-economical aspect. And again, this has always been remaining the question in a matter how we provide best smooth transition considering all of these three aspects, because the idea of energy projection has always been in a challenge to provide the matter of not only the push renewable energy but also considering socio-economic and environmental aspect. I believe that you may take a look in detail in our past report, which I believe that from there you may find some insight relating those aspects that perhaps find it useful for you. So I think that probably the answer that I can give. Thank you. Back to you again, Dr. Nookie.
Edie, I think you forgot to unmute your mic, Dr. Nookie.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Abrar. Yeah, I think it's correct that hydro and geothermal is part of the RE part or RE share in the region, and including also in the AIM studies. And for the next question, regarding with the contribution of geothermal, I think is also being mentioned and including in the RE on our ASEAN Energy Outlook, also in the AIM3. Question coming from Christophic Simatupang. Another question is in ASEAN Energy Outlook, he didn't see about hydrogen, which is one important thing besides other RE and also CCUS. That particular technology is important on the energy transition. How the ASEAN Center for Energy are looking at it. Question coming from Eri Nur Cahyanto to Dr. Andi Tirta, and also question for Monica, Miss Monica, from Ken Hike. Many corporate consumers working towards global 100% RE, and it is hard time reaching those goals, especially on the Southeast Asia, due to the lack of adequate and affordable RE supply in the first place, as well as lack of market legal instruments such as corporate PPAs. In many cases, that would enable private investment in the new RE project. What would it take to increase corporate RE option in the region? In the process to unlock corporate investment, which has been one of the most significant drivers in growth in the new RE infrastructure around the world in recent years. That question for Monica. And then I think these two questions first you can answer, Dr. Andi and Ms. Monica. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie and Ms. Bahari. Sorry. I do agree that hydrogen is very interesting source of energy that can be implemented in the ASEAN. Since the ASEAN has their own some sources that can produce the hydrogen. Yeah, it also can be input in our second ASEAN Energy Outlook to more consider about the hydrogens as well as nuclear as our productions in the futures. I also want to note that with the source abundant like the coal-based or the gas-based that can produce the hydrogens, yeah, it also can be supporter of the energy transitions in ASEAN, especially when we want to produce the clean energy and also lowest emissions. And we noticed that even like we also in ACE right now conduct some studies, preliminary studies that wants to how to implement the hydrogens in the ASEAN. So I think that's all from my side about the hydrogens as the one of alternative as the for the energy source. Back to you, Pak.
Ms. Monica, you can answer the question for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nookie, and thank you for the question. It is interesting to note that yes, indeed, it is hard in Southeast Asia, especially for the investor that is committed to RE100 to increase their RE portfolio, and it is hard for them to like legitimize that they are taking the RE sources for their business. So what I would say is first, the political willingness should be there. I mean, start from the energy planning itself. We are hoping that the government could embrace more RE into their supply portfolio. And then the next one, because not much can be done by the private parts. But I mean, this is the message for the for the government side that the trend is we have more and more private businesses that committed to the sustainable commitment such as Area 100, and it is important for the government to consider this. Then after the political willingness, I would say government should introduce many innovative instruments such as renewable energy certificate and also maybe a carbon trading. So it will open the market for the renewable energy. So those incentives that come from these schemes can be used later to build more the renewable energy sources. I think that would be all from my side, Pak. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Andi and Ms. Monica, for your response. If you have a further question from the audience, please type your message into this message platform. So another question for Dr. Akbar regarding with this smart grid. Is there any information about RE-powered ICT infrastructure, especially for the off-grid areas? And I think this also related with the interconnection master plan studies that you just presented. Whether this including the ICT as a backbone to make it more efficient or make it more robust. And the question is also giving an example in Philippines that which is need to be boosted using RE. Whether is there any ongoing research and development on these matters or already being implemented? What is the status of the utilizing the smart grid ICT in the interconnection, on grid and off grid?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nookie. So I'm capturing there is two questions there. So referring to the first question, whether there is any initiative part of study relating to high smart solar or renewable energy implementation. So as first thing first, the works of AIMS-3 has been in line on identifying two foundation aspects. The first is to provide interregional connectivity, and the second one is to provide renewable energy assessment and to identify maximum possible high renewable energy utilization. So we try to take a look in a high level perspective that which we consider how to provide an updated version of the ASEAN power grid by consuming renewable energy. So in a general, we do not study in a very detailed some aspect about the implementation of smart city and such, but I believe that the part of renewable energy aspect itself, we have already considered under the study of RE resource assessment. So I think the part of study is more like to view that, but rather in a high level perspective. But obviously, this can be some sort of like potential for further study, which I believe that we have already at phase of identifying phase 2 study, grid analysis, which is further we talk about enabling multilateral power trade, and obviously to account some of new recent trends such as the smart city and some of another potential like electric vehicle and so on and so forth. So I think that probably the first answer. And referring to the second question, I think ACE has always been in the key in a part on way to provide the most update technology. So obviously we consider the potential such as geothermal and some other things like the use of hydrogen. So however, again, as we referring in the beginning, the works of AIMS-3 is meant to provide high level view. So we are talking about energy resource buses. However, as again referring to the first question as well, we agree that the AIMS-3 is a part of study that is expandable, that which obviously the most updated issue, recent issue will be included in the upcoming stage. So I think that probably referring to the answer that according to the question given. So back to you again, Dr. Nookie.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Abar. I think the ICT is quite important element to realizing the interconnection, and also it will help proceed the trading process itself when the wheeling charging is being implemented, when more than two countries is being connected and they have to trade the electricity. Indeed, it is very important to implement the smart grid, and of course, the ICT will be the important backbone of those process. So we do have some question for all of the panelists. Maybe one by one you can answer. Start from Dr. Andi, and then Ms. Monica, and then Dr. Akbar, on what is the benefit and challenges. Both you have to give your opinion on increases of the RE and VRE in the region, and whether this 23% in 2025. I know that some of you already mentioned about it, but I just want to make sure that your explanation is clear enough and deliver clearly to us on this 20% target in 2025. Whether it is too ambitious or whether it is very possible in the such very short time. 5 years is not that long, right? So please give us your opinion, and if possible, you can give us also your pro and cons opinion on these matters. Thank you.
Perhaps from me, Dr. Nookie. Okay, should I? Okay, let me try to answer. I hope my friends Dr. Akbar and Monica can add and maybe give another perspective. This is my personal perspective that of course, okay, first it's very challenging questions for me, for myself. As we know that when you have as a perspective of the ASEAN, when you have abundance of coal, natural gas, and also you have the oil in the history of our regions, of course, it's very we are so much blessed with this the abundance that we can easily get it from the land of the ASEAN, also on the sea. We already on the comfort zone of the fossil base for over decades, perhaps from the 70s of the ASEAN's already established. However, when you want to move and to do the transitions to another sector, of course, it will be challenging, and also asking for the policymaker on the country, on the ASEAN member state, what's about the fiscal policy, about the investment, about what's the current technology that you already applied already. Let's say for the steam coal power plant that already invested for a long time, perhaps it's not the investment's not returned yet. So what's about it? So the kind tough questions always be addressed to the governments. Of course, the government have some priorities to do some things on their view about the energy. Again, about the energy trilemma from the affordability, sustainability, and the security. Of course, the government have this own view. Another things from my perspective, the key driver, perhaps we can agree with the political will or the willingness of the AMS to choose the directions about the energy sector, what kind of energy, what kind of the source of energy that want to be used as the majority or as the transitions sequence. Of course, it will be depends on what's the government choose. So that's also the challenging things to be do the transitions. Of course, the pros and cons always be there. Let's say like before someone asks about the fuel cells. Fuel cells, I mean the hydrogens. If we talk about the fuel cells, it's very clean. If you, especially if you choose the green hydrogens, of course it's very clean. No any emissions there. However, you know that the fuel cells is very expensive. It's quite difficult. Needs some imported technology from the outside of ASEAN. So it becomes the challenge if we want to implement the fuel cells as the one technology. It's also happened with another technology from such as like maybe like photovoltaic or other source. So for myself, how to make it transitions do smoothly, we have to think and act together as the residents of the country and also the government can sit together to see what's the best directions of the government of the country to see or to choose what kind of energy to be used in their country. Back to you, Panik. Hopefully answer that's very tough questions for me.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Andi. Perhaps Ms. Monica, you can respond as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nookie. It is indeed an interesting question and has been a long-standing question that always been asked to ACE probably. So I would say that RE of course offer many benefits. Like it is proven more resilient in the time of crisis, like for example in the COVID-19 pandemic, and also with the decreasing cost of the renewable energy, and also with the rapid development of the storage technology, and also the scalability of the storage technology. I think renewable energy would be like a viable choice, and we could benefit from them. And also, I would like to also discuss about the challenges. The challenges would be the financing itself, because yeah, in ASEAN especially, the cost could be say high. I mean, it's expensive compared to the other fossil fuel based. Why? Because our regional capability is still much highly dependent on the foreign. Like we have to import the technology itself, and also we are needing the foreign experts. So another than that, we have to increase or improve the flexibility of the grid itself, because we could not avoid that intermittency is a big problem, and to improve the flexibility of the grid is an expensive things to do. So how to achieve the target? Is it ambitious or is it possible? I would like to stand on the optimistic view that it is possible, and but maybe the strategy could be we have to think of a lot of strategy here. And I would say the low hanging one is to focus on the centralized system in addition to the APG that Dr. Akbar is researching. So with the decentralized system, I think that would be the most fastest way for the region, because we have many suburbs that are detached from the grid using the solar and wind. So yeah, I would say that's the strategy to quickly increase the renewable energy in these 5 years. I think that's all, Panuki, from my side.
Thank you, Ms. Monica. What do you think, Dr. Akbar? What is your opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nookie. So I will take these into two matters. The first is that the challenge and the needed effort in succeeding smooth energy transition. So in general, we see the challenge has always been around the fossil fuel energy-based dependency. And again, I'm referring to Monica and also Dr. Andi, that ASEAN has historically relied on fossil fuel power plant and expected to continue this trend in the future. So as I mentioned again, in the last 3 years, the ASEAN power mix capacity was dominated by the gas, coal, and oil. And these fossil can be up to like 7% of the total energy mix capacity. So in the next 5 years of 2025, ASEAN is expected to install additional coal power plant, reaching the capacity the same as amount as 78 gigawatts. And again, we see that in the future, even the future, 2040, the total coal installation are projected up to around 260 gigawatt alone. So it's a very high amount. So in comparison, again, if you take a look at recent trend, renewable installed capacity, excluding hydropower, will be only around 56 gigawatt by 2025 and 110 gigawatt by 2024. So 2040, so it's obviously that even though renewable energy is growing like somewhere around 5 to 6% annually, by 2040, the installed capacity is still projected to be less than half of the coal capacity in the region. So this is just a pick some illustration about what's happening. So this is something that we need to consider in the aspect of the needed effort. So to give you illustration, the needed effort, I think we need to go in the numbers according to facts and figures find according to the AIM3 study. So our study by 2025 found out that under the base case, the business as usual case, the all renewable energy will be around 37 of the total installed capacity. So in other words, in order to pursue the even APAC RE target, we need to go up around 44%. So in other words, we'll be around additional around of 10 or more percent. So this means that at least around 63 gigawatts of solar alone and around 6 gigawatt wind, which is these are required, assuming all the type of energy are fixed again. Nevertheless, however, through our AIM3 study, the distribution of solar potential actually more fairly distributed. So we can understand some point that we can take in here. Meaning here, each ASEAN member state do have fairly possible opportunity to contribute the acceleration of the clean energy transition in achieving the 2025 ASEAN renewable energy target. So I'm trying to be more optimist here because the thing is that, just referring to my previous slide, you may see that in the past 3 years, the PDP number 7 of Vietnam projected there around 7 gigawatt of solar PV by 2021. But according to the news just recently, we can see that this number already been surpassed and the numbers goes up to around 60 gigawatt alone from the solar. So we can see that how is that the optimism can change the game on how to provide high share of renewable energy. So we can see that in general, Vietnam has been already in a great role in providing this optimism. So I can see that just referring to the what I just mentioned before, each LMS, each ASEAN member state do have the same privilege in achieving the effort. So therefore, I think the most substantial issue is that how we put that into great effort together and to provide the best means in terms of policy readiness and also best practice on implementing it. So I think that probably the answer that I could give. So back to you again, Dr. Nookie. Thank you.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much for the response coming from Dr. Andi, Ms. Monica, and also Akbar, Dr. Akbar. I think it is indeed very challenging to achieve such target. However, there is some possibilities, and indeed it is very promising that in fact, the penetration of VRE reflected into the 35% target in APAC on the power generation installed in 2035. Based on the study that you mentioned, in fact, can be achieved up until 37%. So the possibilities is there, and hopefully that the governments of member states can really looking at those numbers into the policy perspective and of course the regulation. And I do agree with Ms. Monica on the decentralization perspective. We can't really only rely on the centralized power generation because of this the island landscape that we have in the member states of Philippines and the eastern part of Indonesia. So the decentralization have to be combined with the centralization of the power generation, and the combination of the system itself between on the transition process, where we need to reduce the emission and increase the efficiency of the power generation for all of the fossil fuel power generation. It's also important to be measured as well. So with this combination, I think it's quite important. We can't really see which one is better, which one is not. We can't also say that this one is very bad, that one is very good, and something like that. We have to really put it on the perspective that everything have to be in combination, everything have to be in a balance to make sure the security of the power supply, security of the energy supply in the region. Indeed, very interesting, and I also do agree on your perspective that cost is a bit challenging in the region, since the financial perspective is very important measures to increase the RE and VRE in the region. Therefore, financial issues can be really becoming a bottleneck in the future if we can't really solve the issues. So again, there is another question reverse, starting from Dr. Akbar, from Brian Joseph Nobleza. How do you see the realization of 51% decarbonization in electricity generation by 2030 and 100% by 2050 for ASEAN per Paris Agreement, considering the scenario result, which is so significant share of coal and gas until 2025, and as also you mentioned in 2040? So that's a question from Brian Joseph Nobleza for Dr. Akbar. And question for Ms. Monica on the what are the chances? What are the chance for pico hydro, micro hydro, and mini hydro in the contribution of the target mix in RE, especially on the primary energy? And also you mentioned on the renewable energy certification. What is the possibilities of the virtual PPA on the RE certification in ASEAN country? The question coming from Emmanuel Reza Huai and also Birumpat Pakon Seri. So the question for Dr. Andi from Janata Kiwangkara for ASEAN is currently acknowledged as the energy sector last battleground for climate mitigation actions, giving its business as usual projection and current policy to keep rely on the fossil fuel, despite the huge potential of its RE, renewable energy. What ACE stands on this, and how ACE can influence and accelerate the clean energy transition in the region? So please respond according to this question, starting from Dr. Akbar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for the question, and thank you again for the opportunities, Dr. Nookie. So just referring to the question whether that will be possible to achieve 100% use of renewable energy. Let's just not talking about the year. I think I would say simply that I will stand myself being optimistic in achieving 100% renewable energy. So as I mentioned again, that to understand the effort, we see that as I already mentioned, there are quite amount of effort needed for the ASEAN member state to achieve up to 31% of expected total installed capacity by 2025. And even now that the upright RE target, we need to go up to more than that. However, we see that according to the news, perhaps you can check the internet, and even in our study, Vietnam has already played a role in helping us to achieve the target. The some remaining gigawatts needed to push, I mean, the one from renewable energy has been somehow covered up with the new trends, the strategy provided to Vietnam. So you may see that Vietnam, that was primarily heavily relying on fossil fuel and some of energy import from neighboring country, and now becoming one of the renewable energy powerhouse in the world. So it's a matter of time, in a way, how you see that the energy transition is something that will be coming in the future. And this is something that probably we see that, and I believe that is something that we need to put that in a way that we need to be still perceiving in optimism. Technically, obviously there always a challenge in a way. If you take a look, renewable energy has always an issue in terms of the, let's say, the environability, and how is that the growth of renewable energy, particularly wind and solar, weakening the grid strength. And I think these are in a matter of how is that the countries or the policymakers, the utilities see these and providing strategic solution, let's say by providing backbone infrastructure such as a high voltage level transmission line and such. I think when we take a look at these matter into consideration, and also the possibility, the technology that already in the market, I think the way in achieving 100% renewable energy is something that is possible sooner or later. I think that probably will be the answer for myself. Back to you again, Dr. Nookie.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Albar. I think it's quite challenging to reach 100% RE share in the region, and I do agree with you. It is possible, but with some consequences. For example, the cost, consequences on the storage, and what type of storage that we're going to choose, and so on, so on. So the issues of RE, as you mentioned, the intermittency and so on, is quite challenging at the moment. Even in the modern countries, also challenging. So I'll take note on that. 100% are possible with some notes, of course, and we need to have a further study to make sure we are on the right way, on the correct way, on putting all of those primary energy supply in the perspective that it will be beneficial for the region. Thank you very much, Dr. Albar. Next question already addressed to Ms. Monica. Please go ahead, respond on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nookie, and thank you for the interesting question. For the hydro, I would say the chance is promising here in ASEAN, especially for Indonesia, Philippines, and also Mekong region. The hydro potential is there, and if you could check in our 6 ASEAN Energy Outlook, you could see that according to the APS, we could realize like, yeah, it's a promising capacity to be added from the hydro, but I don't remember the number. So yeah, my answer is yes, it is promising for hydro. And the second is for the virtual power purchase, how is the chance here in ASEAN? Again, I would like to invite maybe Dr. Akbar to share your view on this. Because according to my knowledge, virtual power purchase requires like a wholesale market, which is quite challenging here in ASEAN, especially the power grid that currently we have now is more into bilateral, not multilateral. So for this stage, the virtual power purchase agreement would be a challenging one. Another challenge that make this is harder is also we need a set of policies to be formed. Like for example, the REC itself, only a few I think in ASEAN that have established the REC, like Singapore, but not yet in the rest. So yeah, it will be challenging. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Monica. Because of these geographical issues, some countries have abundantly available for winds, for example, potential, and also some countries have a huge potential of the solar, and some countries have no potential at all due to the limitation of the land, the area, which is very limited, and so on. So that's why the REC quite interesting for some countries in the member state to be implemented. I think I do agree with you, and we really need, and again, looking forward for the policymakers to discuss further on this in these issues. So, question for Dr. Andi, you may respond accordingly. Thank you.
Actually, I think Dr. Nookie have the more right for me to answer these questions about it, but I will try to answer it my best. From my perspective, ACE is become the guardians or the facilitator of the as the intergovernmental organizations that try to promote the best alternative for the energy sectors for the ASEAN member states. So with again the trilemma about the affordability, the security, and also the sustainability point of view, ACE should be stands as a neutral energy bodies. So we have to heard and we have to consider all the choices among all the alternatives that become the best solutions for the AMS. Another ones that we also have the main role as the catalyst of the ASEAN member state. We also become the data hub and also the knowledge hub for the AMS. And one last, the most important thing, I think ACE also become the think tank for the energy sectors. So I do believe that the presence of ACE is very important in the energy sectors in the AMS. Not only have the missions, but we also have the concrete steps by the APIC as our guidelines guidelines to do activities and also the programs for the ASEAN member states in the energy sectors. I think Dr. Nookie can answer him better than my view. Please, Pak Nookie.
Thank you, Dr. Andi. I think you did well answering the questions. No need to add from my side. Another question I think goes to Dr. Akbar from Aloysius Tony. How do ASEAN countries came into an agreement with the multilateral power trade? As we know, some of the ASEAN countries have different type of electricity market. He also having another question on how do we address on the power willing agreement between countries and its technical challenges if that becomes one of the APG features. And another question, where can we find already updated progress study about the ASEAN power grid? You may answer this question first. Dr. Akbar, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Aloysius, and also thank you as well for for giving me an opportunity for having this again session. So just referring to first question, I think the idea of establishing multilateral power trade, I think we can stem back to some of recent trends about the perhaps if you could recall some of initiative taken by the Greater Mekong countries, some Greater Mekong countries, the establishment of the well-known LTMS connection. So it's a Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore connection. So you may see that these are perhaps, if I could say, is in the embryo of the establishment of the ASEAN power grid. Since we know that referring to our current status, you may see that most of the countries of the ASEAN countries are adopting single buyer system. So meaning that they are having relatively monopolistic, let's say I'm using that definition, in a way in trading the market. However, you may see that in the northern part of ASEAN, we see that the establishment of the LTMS interconnectivity provide us a new view that the establishment of the multilateral power trade are actually possible. So perhaps this may be becoming the leading part on the way how in the overall ASEAN could enable itself in a way to provide an action on how to establish the multilateral power trade. And just referring to the second question, you may see that the LTMS actually being initiated with the action of unilateral power trade. So it's basically not multilateral power trade, but it's even not the grid-to-grid transaction, but more like single system which allow one country to export the energy. So you may see that through time to time, they're now becoming a part of a progress that enables a bilateral power trade, which ultimately now becoming a semi-multilateral power trade in a form of LTMS. So throughout the time, the progress have made some some of perhaps the development of the billing charge, that perhaps this could be made in the adoption for the other countries as well. So I think if you take a look here, we may see that there's a promising way to enable the billing charge and billing technology or billing methodology that which enable one countries to transact another countries or enable the power trade. So I will see that myself here is that the development of the ASEAN power grid are perhaps a little bit behind the schedule. However, the development of LTMS has proven itself. The ASEAN has already in its way in progressing to the full fledged of the ASEAN power grid. So referring to your third question, whether there will be a future study in relating to this. So I recall that there has been a numbers of study relating to the ASEAN power grid, or perhaps if you find that in a study that more in small scale, such as Greater Mekong Multilateral Power Trade Study that was conducted by, for example, the ASEAN Development Bank. So this, as you can see, through time to time, the result of the study has been made to the idea that we need a progress much more in a way that enable full scale of ASEAN power grid. So from here, you can see that there's a high indicative that there will be more study on this. So probably I believe that ASEAN Center for Energy will be the ground stage in leading in this study. The well-known the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Study 3 has conducting various sets of investigation to enable multilateral power trade in ASEAN. So obviously, the continuation of the MC will provide the best recent stage of the study on how to establish ASEAN power grid in the future as well. So I think that would probably the answer from my side. So yeah, back to you again, Dr. Nookie. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for the response. I think it's clear enough from the perspective of the AIMS-3 study on the APG as well. Indeed, very interesting that the billing charts, can be one of these way to solve the issues on the multilateral trading of the electricity. A question for Ms. Monica Medekawati is the from Hendrik Danstrom. Is the legislation in place in all ASEAN countries to regulate, for example, wind and solar projects to ensure how developments are regulated from planning to construction operation and finally dismantling at the end of life? So the perspective of the life cycle of these RE, whether it's already being legislated in the member state or else, what is your opinion on this?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nookie, for the question, and also thank you, Hendrik, for the question. So, in my opinion, probably most of the ASEAN member states has the embryo itself in terms of like regulating how the each cycle of the project development of the RE is regulated. But I don't know if on the dismantling side, I think because I think not yet RE project in ASEAN that has been dismantled. So probably the question is I have to check further if there is the regulation and also if there is any discussion towards that. So I would say that the embryo is there, but we need more to define all the legislation and the framework, so we could ensure all the project development of the cycle of the project development could be monitored well, and we could have or ensure a successful RE project, not like the one that running for 5 years and then cannot produce for the rest. Yeah, I would say like that. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Monica. I think I do agree with you on that perspective. And one question from the audience, I think last question from the audience, from Ben Rizky to Dr. Andi Tirta. Are there the energy efficiency system which also increasing on demand instead of creating new solar PV panels? So what is the measures on the energy efficiency instead of providing renewable energy from solar, and what is the most increasing demand for efficiency system nowadays. I think it's also related with your project on GSPF. Can you respond on that? Thank you.
Honestly, I don't get fully the questions, Nookie, but I'll try to answer. Yeah, as you know that the energy efficiency, some people call this is the cleanest energy that we can use is the conservations or kind of like energy efficiency. Yeah, but we know that the ASEAN right now struggling and do a lot of activities, a lot of programs, how to make the standard and increase their minimum energy performance standard, or and also some activities to promote the high efficiency equipment, especially for the residential sectors. So like mentioned in the first one, yeah, we also do some projects on the lighting, also with the for the air conditioners. As you may aware that both of the things, the lighting and also the cooling system, is one of the equipment that that requires a lot of energy, and predicted, it's also projected in the future of the ASEANs, the demand of this equipment is become very high. That's all I think, Pak Nookie, and yeah, that's all I think.
Yes, thank you very much for the panelists. I think we are come to the end because the time is not in our favor. We don't have any exclusive time to extend the discussion. It is very interesting discussion that we had today. We're realizing that increasing of the demand on the total primary energy supply and also total final energy consumption in the region up until 2.6-fold in 2040, and it is indeed make very challenging on the supply side to provide a sustainable, affordable, and of course secure energy supply. And also for sure that the ASEAN power grid on the interconnection, it is very important in order to increase the RE share, especially on the VRE in the region. Since the interconnection can really relate one country to another, where there is some demand increasing, and when the other country are having a low demand but oversupply coming from both clean energy from fossil fuel as well as renewable energy. So the hydropower geothermal can be as a interesting baseload replacement on the fossil fuel. And we also realizing it that it is possible for the region to have or to achieve 23% in 2025 on their TPS, and also 35% when the study revealed that 37% installed RE coming from the RE on the installed power capacity. I think it's possible then in 2025. And also I realizing that the 100% even possible, but we don't know in exactly what year and how we can overcome the challenges on that matters. So I think it is also very interesting to know that financial bottlenecks still there in the region, and also the how we can overcome those issues, because it's been around 15 or 20 years, the issues of financial problem becoming the bottlenecks in the region. So, and also the renewable energy certification, it is very interesting thing that we can follow up. Again, the policy is important. The study as a references needed to be done, and ACE as a think tank organization can be as references, as also as a source of policy to drive a more resilient, more secure energy supply in the region, not only in 2025 in the future, but also 2040 and beyond. I think that's ending the discussion for today's second webinar of ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. Again, thank you very much for all of the panelists for your great presentation and great response for all of the questions. And also, of course, thank you very much for the attendees who gave us a very interesting and very sharp question to the panelists. I hope we can see you again for the next webinar session, and really just tune in into our social media as well as our website for the upcoming webinar session. Again, thank you very much for your time, and back to you, Nela, the master ceremony of this webinar. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nookie, for your excellent role as the moderator for the webinar today. It is indeed a very interesting and interactive session. Before I end this event, I would like to kindly invite all of the speakers and participants to turn on your camera, please, as we will have a good photo together. Hi, Shania and Raisha, could you please help me to move the participants, please, to the organizers list? Thank you. Okay, so I would like to invite everyone now to open your camera, please. Okay, I guess we'll just take this photo right now. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I guess one more time. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our event today. On behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, thank you all for attending our webinar today. And we still have another webinar on the 26th April, the ASEAN Energy Transition Webinar, Energy Efficiency. Kindly register on our website on www.aseanenergy.org. Thank you again all. Bye-bye.